Hey, this is Rick again, your bike fitness coach for another video. This one's going to be knee pain while cycling. It's the number one item and number one question we get, the number one issue for most cyclists that come in here for bike fits. My knees hurt. So what part of the knees hurt and what's the cause of it? So we got 6 things to discuss here today. First of all, is the saddle too high? If the saddle's too high, you're going to feel pain in the back of your knee. And that's because you're stretching out the ACL, PCL, MCL. If this is the knee, patella tendon down here, quadricep tendon here. Imagine how the leg and knee is built. The quadriceps come in, they pretty much tie in with the quadricep tendon. And how the knee operates is that when you flex your quadriceps, it shortens them and it will pull this patella tendon and quadricep tendon and basically extend the knee. You shorten this and it pulls this. So this is the lever arm here to straighten the leg, extend, knee extension is what it's called. So if the saddle's too high, imagine the knee is this way. Now you're pulling all of the tendons and ligaments on the back of the knee here, the ACL, PCL, normally the ACL, it's a little guy right in there. So if the saddle's too high, you're like this, you're pulling everything on the back. If the saddle's too low, which again, most cyclists that come in here, the saddle is too low on them. So if the saddle's too low, you're flexing the knee at max flexion, and you're putting too much pressure on the patella and the articular cartilage within the patellofemoral head, and putting a lot of undue shear and compressive forces on the front of the knee. So that's where the knee would be sore in here. Again, there's other, if you have a tight IT band, etc., that's going to pull on the side of the knee. The other issue is that if you have, again, the saddle is too low, you're going to put undue stress on the meniscus. And this is where people say they have a blown out meniscus. They will crack or blow out the meniscus. You can see right in here, it's the 2 pads that the patellofemoral head glides on. You can imagine if you're putting too much force and stress on the patellofemoral head, you're going to be abrading away the meniscus and putting cuts and cracks and basically blowing out the meniscus. So there's a lot of issues with getting the saddle height correct. And again, usually when clients come in, the saddle's too low. We normally have to raise the saddle. The other issue is that what we tend to fix a lot is wedges. Cleat wedges that will turn the shoes this way or this way. We fit people naturally to the way that they walk, stance, how they apply their foot, the pressure. That's how we fit. So what I'm getting at is we normally remove most of the wedges that clients come in with. They tend to tell me, yeah, I got fit by Fitter XYZ. The first thing he did is put wedges in. And now that my knees are tracking straight, I got other issues. Again, I got other pains. I can't pedal the bike anymore because now they've turned me like this. And now instead of pedaling like this, I'm pedaling like this. But my knees are straight, but I got pain otherwhere. So basically it's a Band-Aid approach to move the issue somewhere else. So what happens is you'll see cyclists pedal like this. That's normally, like we talked about last video, most Americans were bigger, wider, heavier, thicker than the Europeans. So our bottom brackets are too small, too narrow. Our feet are put in like this. The knees will follow the hips going up and follow the feet going down. So that's why you see a lot of this issue. Again, if you just simply widen the Q factor, now you're pedaling like this. You don't have to put wedges in to try to put a Band-Aid approach when you can attack the problem with the correct Q factor, adding Q factor. So the next issue is, like we talked about last video, the manufacturers tend to put on cranks that are too long, stems that are too long, and saddles that are too narrow. That's the three common things we see. And then the fourth thing is the cleats are maladjusted. So the cleats also make a big issue with knee pain. In general, the shorter the cranks, the better in most cases. Again, the power formula is power equals force times velocity. So if you have a lot of force, you have a longer lever arm, you're putting more force down, you're turning the cranks up more rotational distance, you're rotating the cranks. If you have shorter cranks, you don't have as much leverage, but you can pedal faster. So you're putting out the same amount of power either way. What's safer? Shorter cranks are safer. Why? Because you have less knee flexion. So what happens is, demonstrate here on my little Cervelo, imagine most fitters will fit the cyclist at 6 o'clock. Make the saddle height, saddle fore aft, etc. They're fit. They don't, this is the crank position that causes the knee pain. This one here, not this one here. So I can adjust the saddle to adjust the leg at 6 o'clock, but where's the adjustment for the leg at 12 o'clock? The only adjustment there is the crank length. So imagine if I put a shorter crank on, let's just make it so you can really see. If I put the crank here, what happens to this leg over here? The crank arm the pedal is now here. So what am I doing? What am I doing to the knee joint and the hip joint? I'm opening it up. The knee is becoming more relaxed at the top of the pedal stroke, as well as the hip. The hip drives the knee up, so a lot of people get a double benefit, knee pain reduction as well as hip pain reduction. So imagine now my pedal is here. I've opened up the hip and the knee, and now since I've moved this pedal here, what do I have to do with the saddle now? Most people say, oh, you have to push it down. No, you actually push it up. You want to maintain this distance. From here to here, you want to maintain it. So if you move it here, you have to move the saddle up as well. So what happens now to this knee if I move the saddle up even further? It reduces the stress and the compressive and the shear forces even more pain reduction. So that's why a shorter crank length is usually the answer for most cyclists. Can you go too short? No, the shorter the better. There is a point beyond which you want to be in the middle factor. The muscles work most effectively and efficiently in the middle of their cycle. So what I mean by that is that, let's say the pedal force, remember force times velocity, my force increases, my velocity decreases, and what happens is eventually you're going to get to the point where the velocity is decreasing more than the force is expanding, so you're actually reducing power. So at the ends of the spectrum, the bell-shaped curve, you want to be in this 3 sigma area. The end of the bell-shaped curve is where you don't want to be on extra long crank length or extra short crank length. What happens is in an extra short crank length, I can't pedal any faster, so my power will level out and even out. So we want to be in this mid-range. Where are most people? Most people are in about a 145 to 170 crank length. That is where most manufacturers need to make their cranks. So it's good for us bike fitters and the bike shops that the manufacturers put too long of stems, too long of cranks, and too narrow of saddles. The bike shops can sell more parts and we can fit more people. So that's what's good about the manufacturers. So with that being said, what are the pros? Let's look at what the pros are doing. What are the pros doing? I had a talk with Alex Dowsett about a year ago, and he told me that in his early career, yes, he used 175 cranks like most of the other cyclists did, most of the other pros. Mid-career, he went to 172.5, and at the end of his career, he went to 170. So the trend is for even the pros to go with a little shorter cranks so they can get a lot more years out of cycling, out of their pro career. What else are they going to? A lot of them are going to the Shimano yellow cleats. They have the Shimano pedals. They've gone away from the red. They've gone away from the blue and they're going to the yellow, a little bit more float. Again, it saves the knees. When you're standing up and sitting down, the body wants to adjust to where it can produce the most power. So let's go with Shimano yellow cleats. The saddle fore aft. So basically, I talked with Dr. Pruitt, Andy Pruitt, who was the body geometry, specialized power, and mimic person that specialized. This is a power saddle on here right now. So he does the knee over the pedal axle also as a good check and balance, where you want, basically what happens is the knee over the pedal axle. You don't want to get the knee too far in front of the pedal axle. It's like when you're in gym class, the gym instructor told you not to do squats with your knees way over the front of your feet, otherwise you're going to get injuries. So it's better to have it a little bit further back. So we normally fit people about where the center of the knee falls about where the center of the pedal axle is. And we can give or take that, but that's a good baseline to start. That's where most people start with on our bike fits. A little less pressure on their knees. So that helps save, so the saddle positioning is important as well. The last one is shoes. Yes, you want to maintain neutrality on the shoes. A good shoe that has come to light recently is the Physique. And if you look at the newer Physique shoes, if you notice, like we talked about last time, they've taken the mounting bolts and they've moved the positioning further toward the middle of the foot. And they've also increased the length of the slots. These are the largest slots out there that I've seen. And this allows you to move not only the cleat this way, in the correct position, but if I also have to move the shoe this way, the slots are moving to help accommodate a shoe that maybe they have excess heel in or a little bit of heel out. I can actually get the cleat into the right position. The only slight drawback on these shoes is that they're a little bit on the narrow side. These are for people with narrower feet for cyclists. I myself have wide feet. I usually go with Lake. They're wide or extra wide, depending if it's their Comp Last or Race Last. I'll go with Lake Cycling, very high quality shoe. These are very good shoes as well. Recommend these. Any fitter can get you in the right position with these shoes, along with that, assuming you have the right width of foot. So let's go one more thing about the crank length. It's been brought up a couple times. Don't go too short. Well, I'll give you a little story. A good friend of mine, Wayne Stetna, his nephew, Peter Stetna, used to be in the Pro Peloton. Wayne's been over here a number of times. We've done testing for him. I was originally a Shimano tester years ago, and yeah, we got a lot of things we tested, bearings and wheels and a number of things. So Peter if you remember him, I believe he was on the BMC team at the time. He got into a tremendous wreck on a tour stage. They came around a blind corner and there were these stanchions in the way, and the first three cyclists ran into these stanchions. He was one of them. I think he broke his kneecap and his femur and a couple other bones. His road to recovery, once he recovered, they put him on a little cycle machine and he had 20 millimeter cranks, 20 millimeter long. He was pedaling just to get his legs going. Short, that is very short, but rehabilitation, that got him to a 30, that got him to a 40, that got him to a 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Now he's pedaling back where he should be. And so can you go too short? For what we talked about before, yes, you can, but it's not a detriment to the body, it's a detriment to the power output. So that's kind of the bottom line on crank lengths. Yes, most crank lengths come in as too long on people's bicycles. Anytime you have a 50 centimeter, a 52 centimeter frame, and they have 175 cranks. Yeah, those are way too long. So anyway, that'll wrap it up, and hope that explains some of the things to look at if you have knee pain.